You're listening to Stand Tall and Own It, the podcast for high-performing female leaders who are ready to make an impact by discovering the safety that comes from understanding their own value and exercising their own authority. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, and I'm here to tell you it is time to just truly be you, my strong friend. It's time to stand tall and own it. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Stand Tall and Own It. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, the intentional optimist. My college boyfriend defined cool as the person who could be their most true self. Now, that relationship didn't last. I'll be married 30 years to my husband next May, but that definition has really stuck with me. I have a tendency to struggle with it, though. I have my own expectations of myself and how I fit into society's norms, and it's been fuel for my personal growth and my business growth. Now, my guest today, I have a special guest for you, has built a business around just being you and embracing who you are as your own unique and most true self. When I discovered her a few years ago, that really resonated, and I've been in and out of her orbit a few times. But when I was watching the end of Survivor 45, if you're not a Survivor fan, I get it, but at the very end, they show the previews for the next Survivor season. And when they showed the previews for Survivor 46, I jumped out of my seat and said to my husband, "Hey, that's Liz Wilcox." Now, if you haven't heard her name before, she calls herself the Fresh Princess of Email Marketing. Yes, that is a reference to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And she is an email strategist and keynote speaker showing small businesses how to build online relationships and make real money with emails. She's best known for selling a blog, turning a $9, you heard that, $9 offer into multiple six figures without ads, which I love, and helping you untangle the email knot with her simple framework, the email staircase. She loves the 90s headbands and the beach, and the beach part resonates with me, and the fact that she just completely embraces her own personal style, I absolutely love it. Now, again, you may have never heard her name before, especially if you're not a small business owner or you may not be a Survivor fan. Either way, what I want you to know is that you're about to meet someone who has truly learned how to stand tall and own who she is through challenges in childhood and marriage and building a business, through being a mom, and now as a contestant on Survivor. I keep looking at these contestants thinking, oh, I could do it better than that, or oh, no, I would never do it that way. And then I watch them do it and I think, I could never, ever do that, what they do. So I'm excited to talk to her about that a little bit today. Now, of all the people that I have followed over the years, I can't think of one other human who has embraced their unique design, personality, and style more than Liz. That authenticity is what drew me to her, and I knew we would have an amazing conversation. I can't wait for you to meet Liz Wilcox. Hey, Liz, I am so excited to have you on the show. How are you today?
I am so good. Thank you.
You know, as somebody who has like tons of energy and looks at your photos, I expect you to match that energy. And it always surprises me when you are just so chill.
Yeah, I think I love that you said that because I find that there are two sides of me, but they're
Mm,
both me. I am loud and I love colors and my glasses are the rainbow but I also am a very like zen,
mm,
in control type of person. And so people are always surprised, especially like if they meet me at an event and something goes wrong, that I'm the person that kind of pulls it all together. They're like, wow,
mm.
I didn't think you'd be good in a crisis. You're, really rambunctious and loud. And I'm like, I don't know. I think they're two sides of the same coin.
Sure. I love it. Either way, I think it's going to be a good matchup here. And I shared in my introduction that I've been following you for years and that I was excited to see that you were on Survivor 46. But that wasn't why I started following you. You inspired me years before, and you were somebody that I was paying attention to already, which if you know me, it's because you are really good at being you and you have embraced being you. And part of that is that rambunctious side. But for those who haven't heard of you yet, have a lot of young women listening to this who are kind of newer in business for themselves, and they probably need to know you as an email marketer. So give us a little bit of a brief history and kind of introduce them to you.
Yeah, really quick. I started as an RV travel blogger. I wasn't one of those bloggers that was like, oh, this is my hobby. I just want to share it. I started my blog to make money. And that's one of the reasons I got really into email marketing because I would listen to podcasts, go to webinars, and everybody and their mother would say, oh, I wish I would have taken my email list seriously
Mm,
much faster. Or they would say, I do all of this to grow my email list so that I can sell. And so when I started my travel blog, I started my email list at the same time. And I just got really good at email marketing. I started to have statistics that other people looked at me like, wait, how did you do that? For example, my first digital product sold something like $7,000 to an email list of 300. My first digital course, I had a wait list of 141. I made 141 sales. And so
mm,
that's when I knew I might know something that you don't. And I sold that travel blog, went all in on email marketing to teach people because dang it, email changed my entire life. Before we hit record, Andrea and I were talking about how I live in the Destin, Florida area. It's a very nice area.
it is a very
I
nice
n-
area.
I
Yeah.
never would have been able to buy my dream home here without email marketing, but I grew up super, super poor.
Mm,
And so I wanted to relate to and connect to and teach the people that related and connected to me that said, yeah, I don't know if I'm ever going to make it. I was
mm.
like, I think I know something that you need to know. Come on over here.
How did you figure out what you knew that they needed to know? I mean, it's one thing to know that you know something everybody else needs to know, but how did you know what it was?
This is such a great question. I just started looking at other people who were already teaching email marketing, and this is no shade. Everybody has a different flavor, right?
Mhm.
And I realized that there wasn't a lot of people that wanted to talk to beginners. Uh, and because the beginning strategy is hard to figure out what you should do to get going, right?
Yeah.
Most people want to talk to people who've established. We could take you from, X to 10X. But if you don't
Mm.
have X yet, and I
Right.
said, well, I remember what I was doing before I had X, so to speak. I can teach that. And I am a teacher at heart. I have a bachelor's degree in education, I have a master's degree in educational leadership. So it was easy for me to kind of rewind and say, okay, what did I do at the beginning? How are my emails different? And I was able to um, dissect my framework, put it into a framework, and teach it.
So now I'm gonna press on the education piece, because I cannot tell you how many women I talk to who are still employed for someone else, who say things like, "But I have a bachelor's in education and I have a master's in education leadership. I would be throwing away my education if I did this."
LOL. Oh my gosh. I Y'all, if that's you, if you have some kind of degree that you feel like isn't applicable to what you're trying to do on the internet or in this new, hustle or business, oh my gosh, I never could have dreamed about how much I use my leadership degree. Are
Mm,
you kidding? When I think about, so my main source of income is a membership.
mm,
Y'all, I have almost 5,000 students enrolled in that membership. And remember, I teach beginners. It's
mm.
hard to teach a beginner,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to teach someone, those first few steps, right? Once they get some momentum, it's like a flywheel. It's just going to get easier
Mm,
and easier for them, right? That's why a lot of people go for those clients. But I'm an educator at heart. I know how to get you from nothing to something. So I use not only my bachelor's degree, but especially my master's degree, leading literally thousands of people every single day, creating curriculum for them, creating the system, the process, the roadmap, and also encouraging them, right? When someone gets on a call and I'm on a live Q&A, let's say there's 150 people and someone, it's their turn to speak and they're obviously incredibly lost. If I didn't have those advanced
mm,
degrees, I would also feel incredibly lost.
mm.
I would not be able to make them feel better. So, having those degrees isn't a waste to go do something else, it is going to improve your chances of success and
Mm.
improve the success of your clients.
Oh, that's amazing. And I didn't know you had these degrees. That's me, because you don't share those in your bio, right? So
I need to start sharing it more. We all let this be a reminder that we all need to more proudly
yes.
acknowledge our accomplishments and share
Yes.
them with our audience.
I had one podcaster tell me, Andrea, I need to know what would be on the wall behind you, right? I mean, I
I
need to
love that.
know what those things would be. And so in my like talking points, I started putting, I actually do have this many years experience. And the more I talked about it, the more I realized I don't have just 22 years experience in higher education. I actually have almost 30 years in higher education because all of my main jobs, even though I had one or two little ones in corporate, were all for universities. Well, that's kind of huge. And because it's a different kind of leadership, it's a different kind of I don't know, animal that you're working within. But I also didn't realize that you had a degree in leadership. How apropos for this podcast. I mean,
It just makes sense now.
it all makes sense. And here's the thing for for people who are looking to learn anything, to know that there's someone out there who knows how to put it together in small steps. I'm gonna just be honest and say I've been on your email list off and on and off and on and off and on, and I've actually not been a member. And I'm one of those people with like 350 on my email list, thinking, what am I doing with these people? So you may see me as a new member soon because I do need to actually do something with it. And I know that there's plenty I could do with it more than just sending out a newsletter.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
And I love that Andrea just admitted, oh, off and on your list. Now
Mm.
I'm on her podcast. When it comes to email, just side note, if you get unsubscribes, it's not personal, right? Andrea just wasn't ready to take that next step, right? But maybe now she is. It's not
Mm.
ever personal. It's always what is their journey. And people will very often hop on and off, hop on and off. Yes, I want it. Oh, wait, I'm a little overwhelmed. Okay, yep, I saw her again. Let me sign
Yeah.
back up. I like her. Oh gosh, no, I got too many emails. Like
Yes.
that's a very
Unsubscribe,
common
unsubscribe,
thing.
unsubscribe. Yeah.
That's a very, very common thing, especially with my topic, email marketing. It can feel really overwhelming,
Yeah.
right? But I find one of the things and the theme of this podcast, like really knowing who you are, feeling confident, standing up, standing tall in that, those things, it doesn't bother me. I know that is the journey. I know that's, Andrea's thing and she's not quite there yet. But if I just continue to do my job, which is to stand up, be visible, keep talking about it, saying the same thing over and over and over again, eventually Andrea and people like her are going to come back. They're going to get on the bus. They're going to buckle up this time and we're
Yeah.
going to go somewhere.
Well, and you're famous for having a membership is it still just $9 a month?
It's $9 a month,
Yeah.
and it's been that way at the time of this recording almost 4 years.
Yeah, so it's not like it's a pricey thing. It's a do I have the capacity? Sometimes we think about that. And
Mhm.
so for those listening who are business owners, we hear this adage of you got to tell somebody something 10 times before they get it, or they need to be exposed to at least 10 times before it really clicks. And that's probably an average. But a lot of times it's they don't have the capacity or they don't have the awareness of what they need until they hit that point. And I think that's kind of what you were just saying.
Yeah, amen. Marketing is not saying 100 different things, it's saying one thing 100 different times because people are gonna pick it up, you know, at different points, and it's the same with, learning to be yourself and be
Mm.
authentic. You have to tell yourself the same thing over and over for you to even finally believe it for yourself, right?
Yeah. One of the things I shared in the intro is that if you open your Instagram page, the one of the first tiles you see is make money just being you, by just being you, grow a business by just being you. How did you come to realize that you could not just use your education and not just use the little pieces that you knew well or that you had figured out, but that you could just fully embrace that side of Liz and put that out there as because it's a very unique look and a very unique persona. And so we know, like, as soon as the previews for Survivor 46 came on at the end of Survivor 45, I was like, that's Liz Wilcox. There was
Yeah.
no question in my mind, and we were joking earlier before we started recording about being on brand. But how did you learn to have that confidence to just embrace that side of you and go?
Yeah, well, I think really it goes back to being a kid. I was selectively mute. I was terrified of being myself. I was
Mm,
terrified of being, period.
mm.
Life was really scary for me growing up. And once I realized, and I realized this at a younger age, that the more I just leaned into myself, the better I felt. Life got better for me. I really enjoyed my 20s. I'm loving my 30s. I'm very excited for my 40s. And
Yeah.
I realized the same thing in my business. At first, you try to look a certain way, and it's all human behavior. Oh, let's mimic the way we see someone
Mhm.
else doing it, right? I mean, that's the same as when we're toddlers. We're just mimicking what our parents do, right?
Right.
Even mimic faces,
Hmm.
right? And so in my business, I realized, and maybe this is my background in education, I realized there was a pattern here. The more I got into it, the more I could slowly start to express myself. And I realized that just like everybody says, just be yourself, make it a little bit of fun. Your personality doesn't exactly have to match so and so's, right? And then when I realized, when it comes to marketing, standing out is actually a really good thing. Wait a second. Duh. I was born to stand out. I can do that.
Yeah.
And I did realize very specifically when I had my RV travel blog, I was myself. I was Liz Wilcox. I cannot be anyone else. But there were some parts of me that I muted myself because my ideal avatar was a man in his 60s. If you can't tell by my voice, I'm not a man in my 60s. And so, instead, like right now, I've got a survivor cap
I'm
on.
sorry,
I've got,
that just waved me.
she's
Okay.
cracking up, folks.
Okay,
But,
sorry. You got a survivor cap on. You're not a man in your 60s for
right.
sure.
I'm not a man in my 60s. I've got In Sync in the background. I love loud color. And I muted certain parts of myself to sort of mimic and mirror these other people. And so when I knew I needed to sell that blog and go all in on email marketing, I decided I'm going to go all in on Liz Wilcox too. If I'm going to be the face of the brand,
Mm.
dang it, it's going to feel good when I turn on my computer. It's going to feel good when I get on a Zoom call with Andrea and we have a conversation. I'm just going to be who the heck I am at all costs. And it turns out it's not really a lot of cost and it's a whole lot of profit, to be honest.
Well, and it's easy for us to kind of listen to you and go, "Yeah, that's awesome," but then when it comes to doing it ourselves, it's always a little bit more of a challenge. Um, but I don't want to leave out the survivor piece of this. Like I said, I jumped up and I said, I know that person. And what's interesting is I started listening to you as you were transitioning out of your travel blog and into email marketing. That was when I first discovered you. I don't even remember whose podcast I heard you on, but
Wow,
that
that is
was
a long time ago.
I know that was because when you said that, I was listening to your post Survivor interview with Rob has a podcast guy,
Mhm.
and who I had never heard of before, but because I'm a Survivor watcher, but I'm not like a
I
super
had
fan.
I had never heard of any of that stuff either until I got on the show.
Yeah, and now on what is it, 47? I'm saying the right numbers, right? Um,
Correct.
yeah, on 47, one of the girls that's like a host on his whole planetary
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So
She's a host.
there's a
Yeah.
Survivor podcast, and now on the new season, there's a host in the network of that Survivor podcast is actually on the show.
You said that very well. I was like stumbling everywhere.
She's doing
But
great.
I was
Give
listening.
it pause, give a review, and we love Andrea.
Yes, please do. Um, but I was listening to that interview and I had already, as I watched it, I was like kind of processing things with you and for you and wondering what all was true and what all wasn't and what was the gameplay? And because when we talk about being ourselves in a game like that, you can't 100% be yourself. You just cannot, right?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, I was born to stand out. That was something that I really realized in the audition process of the show Survivor. And if you've never seen Survivor, it's a show for $1 million, 18 contestants. It's pretty brutal. And they said, well, Liz, most people try to blend in at the beginning of this game. So they don't, you know, that everybody likes to blend in, but you don't look like the type of person that could blend in if you tried. And that haunted me for a few days
Hmm.
because, yeah, you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb in the beginning because that's
Yeah.
how you get eliminated.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what if instead of trying to hide certain characteristics of myself, instead of trying to hide my success, which is a huge part of my identity, I shared at the beginning of this episode, I grew up really poor. I wanted to scream at the rooftops when I finally figured it out. I wanted to help other people. That's a giant part of my life, of my identity. So instead of hiding it, what if in this game I exaggerate it? Because I've already tried to hide bits of myself. And guess what? That made me a really sick, anxious kid.
Mm.
And especially in a game for $1 million, I don't want to be sick and anxious. I don't want to be ruminating in paranoia because I'm telling all these lies about myself. So all the things that I thought would get me voted off, I actually exaggerated. I was like, "Yeah, I'm super mega rich."
I know when you
Um,
said that, I'm like, is she really? I mean,
I'm not. I mean,
because
I do
I know,
just fine. I
yeah,
do
because I'm
just
like, I know
fine.
she does really well, but I had no idea. Wow. I bought it. I bought it
Yeah,
hook, line, and sinker.
right. Instead of, because people might say, "Oh, she's not afraid of sharing her success." So I acted a little arrogant. I don't believe I'm arrogant in real life, but I believe strangers might think I am. So what if I am just overtly this way? And then, these competitors will say, "Oh, that's just Liz. She's ridiculous."
Mm.
Um, and so within the game itself, I never tried to hide any of my strengths or my weaknesses, but I did exaggerate them. But I think, especially going with the theme of this podcast, it was easy for me to do because I know myself
Mm.
so well. I
Yeah.
am, if you watch the show, you'll think, wow, this is the most unaware person ever. But I am very self aware. I know that sometimes I can come off, I say things that are slightly outlandish. I know that I'm incredibly successful. I know that I'm really funny, but I also know, like Andrea said at the beginning, I have this other side of me that is calm and
Mhm.
peaceful and zen and reassuring. And so if I can exaggerate those parts, I can sort of throw people off because most people aren't as aware as me. And it worked. A lot of people were like, oh, Liz doesn't, Liz is so all over the place. She's so this, she's so that. But we kind of like her anyway because she just is who she is. She's not apologizing.
Mm.
Um, and I think it worked out really well. Spoiler alert, I didn't win, but I was the last person to be eliminated from the game. And I'm only the fourth person in history to make it that far and never be voted for. So I think I did really well. I
Yeah, I was
think,
impressed.
thank you so much. And to go back to the original question, yeah, trying to hide yourself in that game usually backfires on a lot of people. I
Mhm.
tried something new and exaggerated, and I think it did really, really well.
Yeah, and, because you do see a lot of players who they'll tell you in the confessional, or you'll see, like, their title, and it's like they're a lawyer, and they'll not tell that they're a lawyer. I think it was Soda maybe is like a civil attorney, rights attorney or
Yeah,
something.
it was
Didn't
a
tell.
lot of people do that, and so for me, it was and I never felt like I was lying. I felt like I was playing a future version of myself. I'm
Oh,
not a
okay.
millionaire yet, but I know one day I will be. It's
Mhm.
inevitable. So I was like, well, what if I just play Liz in the future? Because I thought, oh, what if I just tell them I'm a teacher? What if because I used to be a teacher. I'm like, it wouldn't add up
Yeah,
the amount, the way I speak, the way I hold myself
right.
even. I do stand tall. I am most people are like, "Wow, you're only 5 foot.
I
You
know.
seem like 5'8" on the show. You're way small." And I'd say, "Yeah, I was actually the smallest person on the cast." They're like, "Oh my gosh, it didn't feel that way." And I said, "Really? Because we line up tallest to shortest, and I was always
Mhm.
the first or the last." But I think the way I carry myself, the way I say things, be like, she's not just an elementary school teacher.
Yeah,
She's got to have some sort of leadership qualities. So I was
yeah.
like, yeah, I own a gazillion businesses.
And the other thing you shared is which is one of the first things that got my attention when I started paying attention to you for your marketing, was that you had been on 300 podcasts. And I'm like, I looked at my husband, I said, she shared that.
On the show,
On the
yes.
show, and so let's talk about that because I shared with you when I asked you to be on this podcast, I shared with you how that had been an inspiration for me, and one of there's 2 things I liked about it. Number 1, as you said, you grew your business without ads, right? Which is huge because of the way you did your personal marketing. Number 2, we have a friend in common, Heather Sager, and I finished a year with her, and you were also in there talking about how we could be on podcasts as a different stage. And it was just a lot of confirmation for me. And it reminded me when you were on Survivor that I could do that. So I set a goal for 200. I'll tell you about my goal in a little while, but tell us about that. And let's kind of take it back to how you can grow a business without having to do the traditional bro marketing ad stuff.
Yeah, well, number 1, when I started my business, I didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't just go right into advertising. But I knew, again, knowing yourself, I knew, well, I can talk good. I've got a story. I'm a good storyteller. Andrea mentioned Heather Sager. I hired Heather to kind of help me get this signature talk so that when I booked stages, virtual and beyond, I would have some sort of cohesive story framework, etc., to really nail that speaking engagement. And I just happened to go into podcasting because that's where my audience is, right? They like to listen to podcasts. And you're probably listening right now. Maybe you're doing the dishes, you're going for a walk, you're trying to multitask, right? Just trying to fit it into your day. And so I said, well, if I could be part of their day, that would be great. Let me guest on other people's podcasts. Let me find my audience through other people's audience, right? And it turns out like I love it. And if you can be in someone's ears, like I said, be part of their day, be part of their routine, and then they stop whatever they're doing, right? They get out of the carpool lane, you go to my email, or I'm sorry, my website, and you join my email list. Like you're committed, right? You didn't just have to click a link, you had to stop what you were doing, you had to go. And so I also realized it wasn't just the amount of subscribers I was getting, it was the quality.
Hmm.
I don't care if I go on a podcast and I get one lead. I know I've been talking to that person for 30 minutes already. I'm literally in their ears. I did the dishes with them. I went for a run with
Hmm.
them. I dropped their kid off with them, right? And that's really, really impactful. So when I say, hey, are you ready for the next step? Here's my $9 membership. They're more likely to say yes than, scrolling through Facebook. Oh, yeah, I like that ad copy. That made me laugh. I'll click on it, right?
Hmm.
It's a much more intimate and streamlined sort of customer journey there.
Yeah. And for me, that sounded great because I just don't like doing ads. And
Amen.
I don't have a whole lot of money either. And I'm the person that scrolls past an ad as well on Facebook. And I wonder, like, I have a live event coming up, and I don't even know that I'm going to do Facebook ads this time just because I don't know how much good it does me. I think being in person and talking to people in person, like you, I'm a storyteller. And so I love being the connection with other people and doing it that way. Um, but I shared with you that it encouraged me to do a lot of podcast interviews. But I'm curious, how long did it take you to do 300?
I think it took me a few years, maybe 3.5 years, but now it's sped up. And it was podcasts and like digital summits. So
Okay.
interviews that way too. So it wasn't just a show like this. It might be some sort of interview on a or I'm sorry, on a summit.
Yeah.
And so I think like just this week, I believe I have 9 interviews, and this is my third one, and we're recording like Tuesday early afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I kind of jumped in that speed.
It can be tiring. How are you doing?
I have switched gears because I've hit like 80 in 1 year.
Wow.
And just since
Wow.
February, it was 70 or 80 something. And so what I did was I realized that it was causing me to focus too much on that. And I
Yeah.
wasn't focusing on developing the product, developing, it's like there's a balance that has to come. So I decided that my goal was going to be spread out for however long it took. But I also noticed, and I'll bet you were more strategic in this. I'm just giving you, assuming that I can just give you the credit, is that I was just booking anybody that was even remotely related to my business, but I realized that I was talking to a lot of audiences that did not at all come close to my ideal client. And
Mm.
so for me, I'm becoming much more strategic. So I still want to do 200 or 300 if it takes 3 years, that's fine. But I realized, okay, it did help me. And this is the one thing, if anybody out there is listening, it helped me develop my message better and to say it better. You talk about getting on a digital stage because I talked to so many different types of audiences, I learned how to talk about core values and leadership in a way that worked for young moms with their children, in a way that worked for sales, in a way that worked for branding, in a way. And so I ended up doing my own podcast series on the different ways that you can incorporate your core values because all the stuff that I learned. So, since we talked and I invited you on this show, I've changed my goal because it is exhausting. And
It can be to
yeah,
do all the things. So, I just mentioned, oh, I have 9 interviews. That's all I'm doing this week. I
right.
did a little bit of writing this morning, but I only have interviews this whole week. Nowadays, with the way my business runs, I have monthly recurring revenue. I have this membership, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't have to be working with clients. I have an assistant that works full time in my inbox. And so
Mm,
now I literally have become the face and voice of the brand, and I do almost nothing else. So it's easy for me to say, oh, yeah, I've got 9 interviews this week because
right.
that's all I'm doing. And when I
Yeah.
turn off my computer, I turn off my computer. So someone like Andrea, yeah, we've, still taking clients, still building the foundations of the business. That's a lot of interviews.
It was a lot. And so I've ended up kind of postponing and canceling a lot of them towards the end of the year because I do wanna focus more on the foundations of the business and making sure that I have everything in place. And like I said, I'm focusing on that in-person thing. But,
Love that.
yeah, so because I'm excited about it and it really I think it will help me speak to my audience better. And so my niche is a little bit different. But I do want to move into some questions about Survivor because it just was such a unique experience watching you quote unquote live out this stuff that obviously is edited. Obviously, there's like hours and hours of filming that happens that we never see. And so I'm curious when you went on there because I'm a gastric bypass patient, right? So for me to go on something like Survivor would mean there would be some real challenges for me food wise. You were allergic to, like, everything. Did you know that going in?
I did. So I'm allergic to coconut, which is the main source of food on the island. I also have various fruit allergies. I'm allergic to chicken, cinnamon, a lot of different stuff. And so, yes, I knew that going into it. I did not tell anyone that during the application process until it got towards the very end and they have you fill out this big, big survey.
Mm,
I remember at the very beginning, they said allergies, and I just wrote food, various food, but
mm.
nobody asked me about it. They were more concerned with helping me get through the casting process. And so I remember my casting director saying, Liz, I hear you're allergic to coconut. And this is like seconds before I'm going to meet Jeff Probst in real life. So I've made it very, very far in the process. And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "You do understand we don't give you rice in this modern game because they used to be
You have
they
to
used to give
earn
you
it,
rice on day
and
1."
yeah, mhm.
And I said, "Oh, yeah, I know." She said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I said, "Of course I am." She said, "Okay, your funeral." And she
Nah,
led me into the room, which of
to meet
course,
Jeff Probst.
it's so funny that now that I know that, I feel like she knew that they really liked me.
Mhm.
It was like, "Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" Because she probably knew that they were leaning,
Yeah,
heavily towards a yes. They
yeah.
just needed this, let's meet her in person to make sure she's the person she says she is. So, yes, I knew going in, but I'm the type of person, number one, I do what I want and I don't let things restrict me, right? If I
Mm,
let my allergies restrict me, I would have been too afraid,
mm,
right? And I had
mhm,
this amazing experience and I won, $70,000. That's
mhm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and number 2, like, I just don't let fear get the best of me. right? I figured just like everything else in life, if there's a problem, there's a solution,
Mm.
right? They're
Mhm.
two sides of the same coin. And so the problem is I can't eat coconut. The solution is I'll fish, I'll eat crabs, I'll make friends that pick me for reward. I mean, those solutions didn't pan out the way I
Until they
thought they
don't.
would. But I wasn't going to let the fear of maybe that won't happen,
Mhm.
you know, stop me from doing it.
Yeah, part of my story is learning a lot about myself in the crucible of grief, learning a lot about who I was and who I wanted to be, and that's where my tenets of intentional optimism came from. Um, and you've had some crucibles of your own. You're a mom, you're a single mom now. You shared just you just kind of like briefly said I was selective mute. I mean, there's a lot that you've been through. You indicated that your childhood was scary, but this is another crucible that you put yourself in, and I'm
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
self-induced for
a
sure.
self-induced crucible, but I think we learn a lot about ourselves in those moments because it kind of if you wanna talk about what a crucible does, it, like, boils off the dross, right? It's, like, all the stuff that doesn't need to be there, and you get down to the really essential pieces. What do you think was the biggest thing you learned about yourself?
The biggest thing I learned about myself was that I I deserve grace as much as I give grace. I
Mm.
realized, wow, I do ridiculous things just for, I don't know, the accolades. I don't know why I signed up for Survivor. Um, but I did realize that I'm incredibly hard on myself.
Mm.
Um, I push, I push, I push. And when I stumble, I thought that I gave myself grace, but apparently not. I'm very hard on myself.
Mm.
And there was a moment, and if you don't know me, you're listening, you could literally Google Liz Survivor and my infamy will live online for the rest of time. And I don't mean that in an ego way. I truly believe that there was a scene that will never be forgotten in Survivor lore.
It is
I had
Survivor lore, yeah. And I
I
know
had
exactly what you're talking about.
exactly, exactly. I hadn't eaten in over 3 days, and I had a very public meltdown where I was screaming at people. And then I got over it, but in my head, I was, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that, Liz. Oh my gosh,
Mm.
you just blew up your whole game. You're gonna
Oh, I
go
thought for
home."
sure you were gonna be voted out.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
gonna go home tonight. But in that moment, the other people that were still in the game with me showed me incredible grace.
Mm.
You know, Liz, we haven't seen since this day. You know, Liz, you actually got over it and apologized very quickly.
Mm.
You know, Liz, we love you and we want you around. If that was us, we would have done worse.
Mm. Yeah.
And in that moment, I was, well, you have to be accepting of that grace. And it hit me that, wow, I would have done the same thing. That here is a person that is literally, quite literally starving
Mm.
in a game, was denied food, denied a connection with her family back home. Of course, I would say, "Oh, yeah, yeah, it's no big deal. Moving on. Let's play. We're playing a game. This is
Mm.
supposed to be fun. This is a game." And for them to do that to me, for me, I realized, wow, I'm really hard on myself. And the grace that I give others is the grace that I deserve.
Ooh.
And so since that
Mm.
moment, I have been much nicer to myself. I'm not perfect,
Yeah.
but I'm speaking, this was almost a year and a half ago at this point. And so I've processed it a lot. And anytime I stumble now in my business, in my personal life,
Mm.
I go back to, literally, I can see and feel those people hugging me, looking me in the eye, saying, "Girl, that was totally justified.
Mm.
You're fine." And I
Yeah.
think about that moment and I try to emulate my friends out there for myself.
Well, and this speaks to the power of community as well.
Amen.
And if we don't put ourselves in the kind of community that's going to do that for us and help us see that we need to give ourselves grace, because I remember this vividly. I remember that thinking, "Oh no, she's blown it. She's going home tonight." And then I remember, of course, they edit it, so we only got to see certain amount of that. But we saw people, they showed us people encouraging you and that kind of thing. But the piece that I literally took notes on that night was your statement sitting there that said, "I am no longer holding in what I think. I think that holding in what I think is making me sick." And you spoke to that a minute ago about anxiety and stuff. Has that been the piece, one of those pieces that has followed you?
Yeah, so something my mom said to me at an early age, and we kind of alluded to earlier, was I was sick from home, or I was sick from school. I was home with her. And in all her wisdom, she said, Liz, the more you try to be like other people, the sicker you get.
Mm.
And I realized in that moment, people don't like me already. This is like middle school. Who likes anybody in middle
Yeah,
school?
nobody likes anybody.
People don't like me already. I might as well just be who I am. Because
Mm,
if what my mom is saying is true, I hate being sick. I
yeah,
like going to school. And I had a lot of like gastrointestinal issues as a
yep,
child. I was chronically ill, fatigued, sore throat, always had an infection of some sort. And the more I started leaning into myself, the less sick I became.
huh,
And so in my adulthood, when I started developing all these allergies and weird symptoms, in that moment where I blew up at someone who was literally screaming bloody murder, I I had again like that deeper epiphany of like, maybe this is why I'm so sick,
mm,
because for so many years in my marriage and my personal life, I haven't been able to fully express myself.
mm,
I had to hold it together so everyone else could be together.
mm,
And I make a bold claim on the show. I say, I think this is the reason why I'm sick, because I haven't expressed those emotions that I expressed a couple hours ago. And it's so funny the timing of this podcast, because this morning I finally got myself to a doctor and I'm explaining everything. And they said, "Oh, yeah, stress is an incredible trigger for allergies."
mhm,
Like of course, you have predispositions, you've been exposed to mold, other things, but stress is the trigger. It's the match on the fire. And
oh,
it
wow,
sounds like you've had a few really key points in your life where these symptoms flare up.
mm,
And I thought about all the people on the internet that said, "Oh, Liz, that's not how allergies work. Oh, Liz is delusional. Liz is a crazy person."
I
And
am
I
so
thought,
sorry.
ah, sweet, sweet validation.
Yes,
So, I mean, I know this is a podcast about leadership and, you knowing yourself, like you've got to learn about yourself so you can
yes.
know those triggers, know how you relate to stress so you don't, literally make yourself ill.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few people in my life that I could look back and I can say, I think that person makes themselves sick. I think this person makes themselves
Yeah.
sick. And it's hard to watch. It's hard to help for somebody to be able to say those things to you and for you to be self-aware enough to be able to move forward. My main work is core values work. And so what you're describing and the stress that you're describing is literally having somehow a core value being dishonored somewhere.
Oh, gosh, when you said that, literally, so one of my core values is fun. I love to have fun.
Mm.
I love my life so freaking much. Like I just said, yeah, I'm so excited about my 40s. And I think there were certain times in my life, given the circumstances, life wasn't fun. It was
Yeah.
incredibly difficult, and I could see a way out, but I was trying to bring other people too. I was trying to show them, "Hey, this is simple." Another core value of mine, simplicity. This is simple. It can be fun. You're
Yeah.
looking at it all wrong. And yeah, it was just a complete disconnect from what I truly believe about life and
Yeah.
what life was showing me. And boom, can't eat chicken. Boom, can't eat cinnamon. Boom, stuff like
It's
that.
like,
So that's so,
I
so
would be
true.
hard pressed to eat if I couldn't eat chicken. I mean, it's just I mean, it's just
It
like I would have to learn to eat so many different things, just because I eat a lot of that. I'm a gastric bypass patient, so there's certain things I
Right,
can't eat either, um,
right.
but hearing that, I work with so many clients who hit that realization point where they say, almost every single one of them, "Oh my gosh. I'm the biggest perpetrator. I am the
Mm.
one who dishonors my core values more than anybody else. I allow this to happen. And for you to be able to look back and see how that's happened in your life. And sometimes we mean well, right? We're trying to pull, like you said, I'm trying to pull
Oh,
it
I was meaning the wellest.
the wellest, the most
Is that a
welliest.
word?
Yeah. We can make them up. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But for to be able to have that awareness and look back and see that is really beautiful. And it feels like that's like a good lesson that you've taken and you're going to give to your daughter and that you give to your clients. You probably use this stuff in your teaching now. It affects everything that you do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great conversation.
Yeah, I knew it would be because you're a great conversationalist. So one other piece that I think is interesting about Survivor is that it's outwit, outlast, outplay. And you talked about how you exaggerated things, you played up certain things, you outlasted. I mean, for you to not get one vote until the very day that you were voted out is
Mhm.
phenomenal.
Thank you.
But surely there was a strategy that you've learned that you've now employed in your business. Is there something that you learned that you've employed as you walk away, like professionally, that you do differently?
I think it was, I don't know if it was a new lesson, but just an affirmation that, yeah, Liz, your creativity and ability to think out of the box
Mm,
really is your greatest strength. The way, we shared, oh, I exaggerated things, I did this, I did that. It really got me very far in the game. And it was also, and I don't think this is a brag, it was something that no one else has ever done in the
mm,
game. And it just affirmed to me that, yeah, you are a very creative individual. And it is the reason why so many people want to be in your arena, so to speak. Something
yeah.
they didn't show in the show was that I actually did have a lot of connections. They made me look kind of like this wandering person in the
A
game, but
loner, a little bit of a loner, yeah.
yeah, yeah, but I was actually connected with just about everyone in some sort of way, and that's the same in my business. My business is made from connections, right? I've been on lots of different podcasts. I have thousands of people in my membership, and I think it's, my ability to be creative and also what we said at the beginning of this episode. There are two sides of me. I can
Mhm,
be energetic when I know you need the energy, and I can be calm and reassuring when I know that's what you need.
mm,
And I was like that out on the island. And I came home and I realized I really needed to double down on that in my business to show people, like, yes, I am the one to lead you to where you want to go.
mm. Yeah, because it can be a very scary thing to wanna walk into email marketing. So, as we kind of wind this down and close this out, I know that you just shared that you got where you are because of connection and doing that kind of thing. But I want to make it really clear to anybody who's potentially thinking about starting their own email list or potentially starting their own business, um, and listening to this as a leader or as somebody who's maybe owns a business already, why is email marketing not dead? Why is email still a thing?
That's a great question. Well, email marketing is a decentralized platform. So even with Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all these other platforms, what you have to understand is that's centralized. One person owns it,
Yeah.
right? Like raise your hand if you were alive in 2022 when a billionaire bought a social media platform. Suddenly it's got a new name,
Mhm.
half of its users, and no advertising dollars, right? It's sort of imploded on itself.
And just had to pay a bunch of fines in Brazil.
Okay, see what I'm
Mhm.
talking about? With email, it's decentralized. It's billions of users, right? Andrea's got probably 5 emails. I've got 10. You have 20, right? And, there's Microsoft in the game. There's Yahoo, Google. There's lots of different little ones, right? And so email is hard to kill, so to speak, because there's not one company or one human running the entire show, running it into the ground or pushing it in a direction where it's unrecognizable, right? Email is email is email because it's run by so many different users. So that's why it's not dead. And that is also why you should choose email marketing, because it's the only place where you own those potential customers, you own their email address, right? With again, that social media platform we just talked about, if you had built your entire
Hmm.
audience on something like Twitter or X, and suddenly half of its users are gone, you might be wondering where half of your revenue went, right?
Mm.
So having the capability to say, this person, Andrea gave me her email list. Until she tells me otherwise, I'm going to email her, whether or not you use something like Kit, Active Campaign, Stan, Flowdesk, whatever, you can choose that platform for yourself. Again, because it's decentralized, so it's never going to die.
I like that. And, even though we joked about hitting unsubscribe, because with Google, you just there's a one unsubscribe button. And,
Mhm.
sometimes I'll opt into something and but I'm already paying attention to that person, and then it's like, I don't need to be on that particular list. And as somebody who owns like an email list, I know that there are people, I have like 350, but like 270 of them are the ones that get my newsletter because some of them have opted out. But they
Right.
get other things from me. So it's interesting to see how people still read my emails, right? It's like it's real easy for us to assume that nobody wants to get email, but people read them, people get them. Um, so if somebody wants to find you, tell me how to do it and tell them how they can get involved.
Yeah, of course, I'm an email marketer. I'd love for you to join my email list.
Hmm.
Because remember, people read emails, they just don't read bad emails they didn't opt into. So
Mm.
I'd love for you to opt into my email list. When you do, you're going to get an entire welcome sequence already written for you. So you know what to send to those new subscribers you're going to get. You're also going to get 3 newsletter examples, and you're going to get 52 subject lines for a year full of prompts. That's lizwilcox.com. There's a hot pink button in the top right hand corner. You can't miss it. lizwilcox.com.
And you inspired me as well with the whole hot pink button. I now say there's a button right above my head, right? The
I
whole
love it.
idea of just making things really easy for people because I think people want to learn, right? People want to grow, people want to figure out how to do things. And when we can make it easy for them, it just is so much more, just greases the wheels and removes the friction. And of course, we're going to put
Amen.
all of this in our show notes. From this conversation, is there one thing, last piece of advice, anything we might have left out that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So anytime I go to make a decision in my life or business, I ask myself 2 questions. And maybe you can take these 2 questions and help you make your next right step. Number one, what would it look like if it was easy? It usually gets my brain going in a different direction than it was. But of course, sometimes it's just not easy. So I've got a backup question for you. What would this look like if it was fun?
Mm.
Usually, between those two, I can figure out my next right step. And I hope that helps you get going with your next right step. Thanks so much, Andrea.
I love that. I'm going to use them because I'm in the middle of doing this live in-person thing. There's something I'm learning every single day that's hard. So my brain is
I'm sure you're
tired.
right.
Wrote my first press release, all that kind of stuff. Liz, this has been delightful. You far exceeded my expectations. I knew that having a conversation with you was going to be so much fun. And I loved seeing the other Zen side of you. And I just really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.